snowing and I'm climbing a ladder and I'm hating it.
Of the equipment that was originally in the facility, it sounds like you had an air compressor already hooked up,
Yes.
and that was about it.
Yes, so we purchased the propagation vessels. Again, they're 7-barrel tanks. I think we got them from GW Kent, I can't really remember. But those are probably like close to $10,000 each, which again, we got a deal because we were like also buying a pilot fermenter at the time. So we had to buy the tanks. We bought a 0.2 micron sterile air filter, I think the same exact one that you guys have. Again, where would I have been without you? Every time I'm just like, send me a product code for the exact thing I need right now, Matthew, because I don't know. So that was probably like $300, I want to say. It's not expensive. And that's also now been, we're expanding that manifold where that's going to be our brew house oxygen also. Like we're just going to sterile air oxygenate our wort. Because but there's no reason to use oxygen tanks, I've discovered, other than not even like cleanliness. Like they're not even sterile all the time. So different conversation. But sterile air filter, associated hardware with that. We have much of that in house, like things to hook up to gas lines and tubing and stuff. Our maintenance guy probably already had a lot of the hard pipe that we used for the air compressed gas to like get it over to that side of the building. So that was no big deal. And then other than that, like we bought some 7-gallon jugs from Uline or something to use for harvest. So we primarily harvest in 7-gallon jugs. And then we have like 5-gallon jugs and 2-gallon jugs that we just like kept from times that we ordered pitchables and just caustic clean, and we use those. So that's another thing that feels really excellent about this is we're not like creating anything disposable. That was like a big resistance I had where I was like, we need to have brinks, we need to have stuff that we can sanitize and reuse. Like I'm not putting that much more plastic in the landfill. Personally, it's stressful. So we have like jugs that are dedicated to the prop system harvests that we just caustic clean and use after they get emptied. So yeah, those were probably like $12 each or something. We have like 10 of those, and then the various ones that we kind of just scrappy saved. And then like costs that are associated with just the prop itself, like we're obviously pulling wort off of our system. So that's a cost that's hard to specifically identify because sometimes we're pulling wort off of our system and it's like detrimental to like the total volume of the knockout of the brand that we pulled it from. But other times like we're over our OG, and so we kettle up and like create that volume, and so like that happens more frequently than not, where we're actually like conserving wort that would have gone to the drain or like wouldn't have been able to fit in an FE. So that's a cool thing that happens sometimes. And then we don't use DME unless we like are in a super bad pinch and like the brew house isn't running and we really need a prop. So I think of the, I can't quite remember how many props we've done. I want to say like 30 or 40. We've probably used DME, like brewed with DME to feed the yeast like once, maybe twice. But then also we are putting defoamer and everything. Ferment K, I do not know how much Ferment K costs, but we're doing like 600 grams per 7 barrels per 3-barrel pit. Seem right to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing 4 for a while, and Tim was like, just bump it to 1,000. I'm like, I'm not doing it to 1,000. So 6 was our compromise.
Do you guys bleed off wort from only certain beers, or has it not mattered?
Yes, from only certain beers. We find that, and I have not totally correlated this graphically yet, but my observation is that if the wort is a little bit higher Plato, it's going to produce squeak us out like an extra 10 or 15 barrels of pitchable yeast that gets harvested at the end of it. So I like to use things that are 14 or 15 Plato. Things that are higher than that we typically avoid, but we don't really have that many higher ABV brands that are suitable for prop, because that's Yeti. We're not going to put 22-degree Plato brown wort in with our prop. That's going to create color issues and stuff. So looking for things that are lightly hopped, don't have big weight kettle additions, and are between 12 and 15 Plato. So Colette is my favorite harvestable brand. wort harvestable brand to feed the props with, which is ironic because Colette is our diastaticus brand, and so like there's always this like paranoia around Colette, like, so it feels funny sometimes to like I see on my yeast prop logs it's like Colette wort, and I'm like, wait, but it's just the wort, so not the same thing. And then yeah, if we're taking from something like Titan IPA or Hazy, which both have like higher OGs, like 15.2 and 15.6, we're just pulling the wort out of the whirlpool before the whirlpool additions, which is, you know, better for the yeast not being so stressed out with all those hops in there. Although one time the brewer forgot to and like knocked it out after the whirlpool addition was made, and it was completely fine. The viability was great. So maybe it's not as big of a deal as we think, but we also don't want to be, you know, putting whirlpool hops in for, you know, 12 extra barrels of volume that's ending up going to our YPBs because it's just a waste of hops and money. So we try to pull wort pre-whirlpool hop additions for brands that do have like big whirlpool hop additions, like Titan or Hazy.
And so you guys are going from a 3-barrel pitch up to about 150, 170 barrels.
And that's based on like Denver Pale Ale is like OG, which is like 11.8. If I value it for Titan, obviously it's going to be a little bit less.
And how much time do you think you spend a week managing all of this?
So mostly I'm managing it like Monday and Tuesday when we do harvest and when we do knockouts. So Mondays are like the long days with it. I probably spend like 4 hours between sanding my parts and lines, harvesting yeast, counting my pitches, putting them away personally, and then creates a little bit of work for the cellar person that's on shift who has to like flip those tanks, CIP them, and sanding them for the next day's knockout. So yeah, I'd give myself personally like 4 to 5 hours on Mondays, and then anyone else in the cellar, it doesn't take long to flip a 7-barrel FE, so you know that's taking them like maybe 2.5 hours to do both of them, and we don't always do both of them. Sometimes we're just flipping one. And then on Tuesdays, I basically just prep my media, put it in the autoclave, get my pitches out, prep my anti-foam, and then pitching all that stuff takes like 20 minutes. So the brewers knock out the wort and lock it up, and then whenever I'm ready, or sometimes I beat them to it, I try to do it after them just to make sure the wort is like the right temperature and the right thing. And that I'm not putting all the valuable stuff in, and then they're just like putting fucking 50 degree Celsius wort in there. But anyways, so yeah, that whole process probably only takes me, you know, half an hour of prep time and then like 15 minutes of actually pitching it. So that's like no time, you know, hook up the gas, make sure the controllers are set. And then every day I'm checking gravities of everything. So, you know, pulling that extra yeast gravity, 2 minutes, and then doing the plating that I do, which again, I'm already doing plating for everything else. So it's just per week, you know, a day 1 sterile sample and then a terminal crash sterile sample. So if I'm running both props, it's just 4 extra samples that I plate every week, which is like nothing. So yeah, it's really like not that much time. I guess the sitting at my computer crunching numbers math part of that is a little extra time. It's harder to quantify because I'm filling that in with, you know, all parts of my day, but putting all the counts into calculators, into spreadsheets, and then translating that to directions for the brew house, like, hey, here's the info for today's pitch, it's this jug, this identifier, here's your viability, here's your density, go for it. So yeah, it's not an incredible amount of work when I spell it out.
It's getting plated.
Everything's getting plated. I don't love the PCR system I use right now, as I'm sure you know. So whenever I have questions, I like to bring my things to you guys because you're gracious enough to help me answer them. I'll come back to bite me. The hope is that we can upgrade our PCR system at the end of this year because the prop system is doing so well and saving us so much money. So yeah, fingers crossed for that. Someone from Midwest Microbiome came and dropped off a bunch of stuff here, and I was like, yes, please. But that's going to be a harder sell for management. Although every time I've asked management for things to improve my practices, and that eventually helps save us money, they do. So, you know, the yeast prop system is kind of like paying for itself in that regard. Like, it's hopefully going to give me access to better PCR materials, so then the system can get even better. That's the vision.
That's awesome.